Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Simon Tupman. Welcome to the latest edition of Law Chat, coming to you from sunny Ohakuni and also from sunny Parnell. Of course, Law Chat is brought to you every month in association with more Markhams, accountants and business advisors offering specialist financial services to the legal profession. And I'm absolutely delighted that our special guest today is one of their directors, Sam Bassett. Sam, good afternoon to you, and thanks for joining us on Law Chat.
Hi, Simon. Hi, everyone.
Yeah, good to see you. How are you? Because you've been in lockdown for something like a record 5 weeks now.
We are, and 2 more weeks before we're properly back in the office, at the very least. No, we're going well. The weather's getting better, which is always pleasing.
That's always a positive. Look, well, it's good to see you, and I'm glad you're well. One of the things that I'm going to focus our discussions on today is the issue of welfare. We've got quite a few subscribers who have tuned in today. But before I do, I'll just give this a plug, because for those viewers who may be watching, you may recall that I did a law firm welfare survey earlier this year. I am running another one. And I've got quite a few replies already, somewhere approaching 30. But if you haven't participated, do go to my LinkedIn page, and you'll find the link there under one of the recent posts to participate in the latest law firm welfare survey. But I mentioned that, Sam, because I conducted that back in April in order to, I guess, take the pulse of a number of firms and find out how they're doing, both in terms of productivity, but also in terms of their own welfare, the stress levels and all the rest of it. But I'm interested to hear from you in terms of your experiences with more Markhams, because you are an accounting firm, you've got 9 offices around the country, but there's much that lawyers can learn from accountants and vice versa. So from your perspective, tell us, what have been the significant changes that have impacted on your firm as a result of the pandemic and the subsequent lockdowns?
Well, thank you, Simon. Yes, I can give you a rundown about how the Markhams group around the country has fared with COVID, and well done, by the way, on the wellbeing survey. To get in the New Zealand marketplace, to get north of 50 responses that's a well participated survey, and you're getting sufficient numbers there to be picking up some significant trends. Well, look, the significant impact we initially had following the first lockdown last year were really IT-related issues, a lack of laptops around the office. About half the office, we in Auckland have an office of 70 people, including 8 directors and sort of 60-odd staff. And half the office had laptops, half didn't, and all of a sudden grappling with those sorts of issues was something. The other one, we had been piloting, and a couple of our teams were using a new client portal for sending tax returns and financial statements and things like that to clients. And one thing that was brilliant through the lockdowns last year was all teams embraced the use of the client portal much more, because it really is helpful to be able to get documents signed where clients get something that's user friendly to push the green buttons and authorize stuff electronically rather than having to scan and sign. And I noticed that trend has continued in the marketplace. I'm getting quite a few of those types of requests now from the banks for property transactions where I'm a independent trustee, and I've been getting an email from ASB or one of the banks with a series of push buttons to authorise loan agreements and attach my signature, which frankly would have been sort of pretty unheard of in that sector, to be signing up loan docs pre-COVID. So that is an excellent change that we've seen. And I think, as a general comment, one of the positives out of the COVID impact was a couple of our paper-heavy, I would call them, teams across the office that had been slower to adopt a more paperless environment. Boy, have they changed, and that's been really pleasing to see. So those were some of the factors that we picked up. We did a staff survey. So some of the significant changes, I suppose, that Markhams implemented as a result of COVID, we did a staff survey, And one of the things that really came through to us loud and clear was flexible working arrangements. I mean, the staff, I think it would be fair to say, ganged up on us to a certain degree and just said, hey guys, this traditional way of working, we've got used to being able to be productive in a more flexible manner during the lockdowns in 2020. We want some more flexibility. So we have adopted a trial of there being flexible work arrangements for our team, 7 in the morning till 7 at night, with core hours being between 10 and 3. But team members are able to come to arrangements within their team where they can work flexibly within those hours, coming and going from the office.
Are your people happy with that arrangement?
Yes, that, as I say, there's been a real groundswell for that, particularly in Auckland, where there's traffic issues and people coming for, facing 45-minute or an hour commutes to and from work. They really like the concept of being able to work remotely 1 day a week, or work during those flexible hours. We also realised when we did our review, mental health and wellbeing. We're a small to medium-sized network of firms. We're standalone offices. We don't have fancy HR systems and processes like the big four accounting firms. And one of the things that we didn't have was any mental health or wellbeing process or formalised policy. And we've utilised the services of an outfit called EAP, which provides employees with a confidential 3 consultations at the employer's expense that they are able on a completely confidential basis to utilise. And then the firm is invoiced accordingly. And interestingly, most people tend to only want to have 1 session or 1.5 sessions or something like that, but they feel that actually you need to have 3, that you should, that's their requirement to really push to have 3 consultations, completely confidential. And that, when we announced that a few weeks before lockdown, the team were the feedback was phenomenal. There were many people across the office that said from time to time they really would have just loved to be able to pick up the phone and have a bit of a confidential chat about whatever's going on in their lives that's work related or things that are stressing them out. And they thought that was a tangible thing to have. So so far so good. We'll see what the take up is. And so those are some of the things that the Markhams group has faced with COVID. That leads me on to, I mean, one of the other things, Simon, is staffing. I'm not sure. Yes. Staffing is an issue that we have faced in the accounting sector, but I am picking up with the small to medium-sized law firms that I'm working with that there just are not enough property or commercial lawyers, particularly in Auckland, but across the country. And that has led to, quite frankly, a bit of a bidding war going on with set wages and salaries and perks and everything that can be offered to try and attract staff or retain staff. And that has to, in my view, start to flow through to legal pricing, because you know wage costs in firms are our most significant expense, and they are on the rise. Firms are paying significant recruitment fees and are facing wage pressure, and they're of course having to tack that on to their charge rates. But there is very much a shortage of general practice lawyers with property experience and trust law and commercial law particularly. Perhaps not so much in litigation. Things have not been as busy in litigation, but there's been a huge amount of work out there and just not enough lawyers to go around is the feedback I'm getting.
So that's obviously a fairly considerable challenge for firms that are operating in those areas. What are you hearing about other challenges that firms are facing at the moment as a result of lockdown or the world generally? For example, are you getting feedback in terms of preference for flexible working or hybrid working arrangements? Are you getting feedback in terms of the state's emotional and mental well-being of people?
Yes, I am getting feedback from the smaller firms that it's been quite an intense time, both at the senior level in firms, but with the partner group, partner and director groups in firms, but also practice managers and staff solicitors. Really, the whole workplaces. There's been no overseas travel now for an extended period of over 18 months. And that's led to, by nature, people not taking much annual leave. And in fact, one of the things I'm seeing financially in firms that they are needing to work on is their leave balances. And a couple of firms have been looking at their leave balances and saying, hey, we need to be indicating to staff, we want you to take a full 3 weeks off over the Christmas New Year break. We are going to close the office. And that's been done partly for financial reasons, but I think, Simon, it's also the firms that I've been chatting to are thinking, hey, look, we are just going to announce to clients we're shutting down we are closing the doors and we are all going to have a good holiday because there is pent up demand out there for a non-lockdown break away from work. I think it would be fair to say.
Yeah.
And and that ties into some of the mental health stuff and well-being stuff that you've probably picked up in your survey.
Yeah, I think it probably does. Sam, before I sort of take this conversation further, a thought I've had too, and I haven't often done this in the law chats, and that's just to say to those that are viewing live at the moment, if you want to use the chat bar, and if you've got a particular burning question that you'd like to ask Sam, send it through during the time that we're on air, and we'll see if we can get Sam to answer it. But I know there's quite a few lawyers there who are obviously quite keen to get Sam's insights in terms of how firms are performing financially. Now, Sam, you also run the biannual financial benchmarking survey amongst your clients, and I think this year you're due to come up with another survey, and your research is currently underway. Can you give us a sneak preview in terms of some of the revelations that you might come up with in that survey?
Yes, look, basically, I am expecting the survey results to come through extremely positively. Most law firms that are submitting have either a December 2020 balance date or a March 2021 balance date. And the data that I am seeing coming through to date is that financial year either ended December 20 or March 21 is phenomenal from a financial point of view. What happened was that, most firms, most small to medium-sized firms that I was working with did claim the first wage subsidy back in March, April 20. And because things were so uncertain and no one knew how things were going to pan out. But what happened was, with an extremely buoyant property market, and then a whole lot of other factors as well, such as the changes in property tax legislation, Bright Line, the new trust law that came into effect, the new marginal tax rate kicking in on the 1st of April, and some restructuring in clients thinking about that, along with, while firms did meet the criteria generally, they tended to be down 30% or more in the month of April 20 in terms of their billings. What was often happening was that there was this delayed demand effect. And you saw that a bit in retail as well, where people had been locked down and then they went out and made up for lost time in terms of their spending. And luckily, that happened in the legal sector. The conveyancing the property market took off once we came out of lockdown. Settlements took place, commercial deals picked up, And so things really were remarkably buoyant through to the end of the financial year. So I am expecting that the 2021 biannual survey is going to be providing some pretty phenomenal results. Look, with the benefit of hindsight, when you look at some of the financial statements that are coming through, the COVID subsidy was helpful to that, because it was this dollop of wage funds that, not by design to be fair, but just through luck of the economic cycle, has meant that the firm results for the financial year are pretty impressive.
Yes. So tell me, when does the survey, when is it published rather?
I'm expecting, look, it's been delayed a bit with the lockdown in Auckland. I was hoping to get it out by the end of September. I think now, more realistically, that's going to be the end of October.
Okay, so, and how is it available? Do you publish it on LinkedIn or through your website?
Yes, we publish it. It's it does have a cost associated with it. It's $500 to get the report and the data of firms.
Yes.
And while I don't get a huge number of firms, I usually get north of 20 firms submitting, which provides enough data for 4 or 5 suburban smaller firms and 4 or 5 city firms, various firms at different sizes. So there's always, 3 or 4 other comparable pieces of data in there that firms can see how they are performing against.
And it is restricted to Auckland, as far as I recall. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, it is just Auckland firms,
yeah.
Not barristers. And the firms that submit are not what I would call the large 6 or 8 firms.
Yes.
They are the middle tier firms with 15 or so partners or less, down to sole practitioners. And the results are published on a per partner basis, return to working owner basis. So that the data is relatively comparable.
Yes. So you offer us obviously a snapshot in terms of how firms have been performing post-COVID, if I can put it that way, or rather post the introduction of COVID. But looking ahead in terms of where people are or might be at the moment, are there any particular tips or things that firms should be alert to that have come across your desk during your regular work with law firms? Things that perhaps firms are slipping up on, or that they should really address the busier that they get?
I think pricing, frankly, is one of them, Simon. I mean, we all talk about that. Some work, you've got to start prioritising your work and charging for it accordingly, is some of the consulting advice that I'm giving to firms, because firms are incredibly busy, and you've got to be throwing your resources and your valuable time as a group within the firm to appropriately priced work, so that you can respond to the demand that's out there. So that ties in with, we are going to look. It's been a structural thing in the Western economies for many years, the lack of trained professional staff, and that look, we've been spoilt for a piece of time where we haven't had an exodus of people going over to Australia or overseas. But watch this space, you roll the clock forward another 18 months or so, and firms are going to be gasping, because a lot of their younger team members in their late 20s and early 30s are all going to be doing their delayed OE, I suspect, and are going to be looking at other opportunities outside New Zealand. So staffing is going to be a key factor for the New Zealand legal sector. It already is, interestingly, in the provincial centres. In some of the provincial areas in New Zealand, getting staff for small firms is really difficult in your Hawke's Bays and your Wairarapis and Wanganuis and around provincial New Zealand. Now, they've had a smattering of real good people that have come back as a result of the pandemic from overseas and decided to come back to New Zealand for lifestyle reasons. But that's, I suspect, not going to last. That structural issue of there being a shortage of trained lawyers in those locations is a real factor. Now, you're actually, in fact, I was dealing with someone just last week that had gone back to Japan for family reasons during the lockdown last year, and has actually been working remotely in a firm for the last 18 months via Japan, for goodness sake. And hey, it's working. You know, it actually is working. The clients have been serviced and stuff has been done. And who would have sort of thought really that kind of thing would be going on, perhaps? But the firm is happy, the employee is happy for now. I'm not sure about all the ins and outs of the arrangement. I think the plan is that she will be coming back to New Zealand in due course, but she has just been continuing doing her thing via Japan, which was quite neat. So, yeah.
There's flexible working for you. Sam, let me just bring the conversation back. You touched on the importance of effectively charging for value, making sure that your pricing is right. And as you know, a couple of months ago, we had one of the pricing gurus, very well known in the accounting sector, but also latterly in the legal sector as well, Ron Baker, come on Law Chat and talk about the uptake in subscription pricing across professional service firms, particularly in North America. From your perspective, working with law firms in New Zealand in particular, do you detect a trend away from billing by the hour to experimenting with more hybrid pricing models, alternative pricing models like subscription pricing or fixed/value pricing?
Look, I must say, Simon, that I'm not seeing that in the New Zealand legal sector with the small to medium-sized firms that I'm working with generally. The vast majority still track their time. I think it would be fair to say that there has been a trend towards, and this has been driven by clients as well, wanting some certainty about pricing. Where, you know, it's so much we'll do your trust and your wills, and we'll get you to this point in the litigation process or whatever, and this is our fee estimate. But in the background, there is usually a timesheet system still in operation to be tracking just how how much resource has been put into those client engagements. But in the accounting sector, very much so. There has been that system for compliance accounting has been in operation now for several years in New Zealand, around where you have a bronze, silver, and gold service where clients can say, hey, for $150 a month, I'll have a bronze service, and for $300 a month, I'll have a silver, and for $700 a month, the works. And interestingly, with those types of plans for businesses in the accounting sector, you need to be very careful with what we call scope creep. What tends to happen is a business client will 9 times out of 10, they won't take the cheap one. They'll tend to always go for the middle one, but then they'll try and turn the silver service into a gold service. Yes. So it's working through that. But accounting is slightly different. I think it's going to be harder in the legal sector to have those service plans. But hey, it's interesting, that work that Ron is doing. And if it's happening overseas, I can't see why, certainly for some law firm clients, particularly businesses, where there isn't.
Yeah, absolutely. Watch this space. Hey, look, a question's come in for you, Sam, from a partner in a firm down in the South Island. And Tim asks, has the robust performance last year slowed succession planning in firms?
Yes, I think it probably has, Simon. And that's really through nothing else. It's been just people are so frantically busy. They haven't had time to address their succession planning. I do want to talk about succession planning, actually, because I do think, however, there is some pent-up demand in that area. There are rafts of practitioners now in Auckland in their mid to late 60s, who frankly, when I chat to them, they've really had enough. They want out. They've had to grapple with a lot of legislative change that's impacted their practices. The AML legislation, and then all the trust law changes and the compliance with that, and now they're faced with the lockdowns. And if they haven't got slick systems and an IT platform, some of the really smaller practices in Auckland are finding it hard and finding it tough, I think.
Yes.
And those practitioners are wanting to move on. And an area that, interestingly, I think it is. I think firms that might be interested in taking on smaller practices, they are getting a little more thoughtful, perhaps, about paying big dollars for firms where there is a lot of work to be done in terms of getting them more paperless, getting their databases organised, everything all scanned in and systemised. That all is resource and time that the existing larger firms don't have, frankly, at the moment. And there is a limit to how much they're going to pay in terms of goodwill, or there's a limit to how much money is going to change hands just right here and now, I believe, for taking on some of the smaller practices. So it's going to be interesting to see how that issue plays out. Some small practices are really going to have to accept that it's just an opportunity of handing over their clients and getting out, frankly. But there's not going to be serious money changing hands in a lot of circumstances.
So what would you say has been the impact of COVID on the valuation of firms?
Well, I think perhaps, as I say, the impact has been, although the results are phenomenal, and the financial results have been phenomenal, if you've got you might have a traditional small practice that had a very good 2001 financial year, but when you look behind that, if there aren't systems and a client and things that are also transferring, there is a limit to how much goodwill is going to be paid for some of those firms, even if they are relatively profitable.
So presumably the moral of the story here is, if you want to increase the value of your practice, then address those systems, those procedures, and also look to try and hold on to some of your young people who may be your stars of the future.
Yes, I'm a huge supporter of internal succession, Simon. I've seen it work time and time again. And internal succession can be a way for the owner to, over a 4 or 5 year period, do a nice transition, and they actually extract more value. And I see that time and time again, than if they just soldier on and then all of a sudden, right at the last minute, have to hand the firm over to some larger competitor down the road.
Absolutely. Well, Sam, look, thank you very much for joining us. And before you go, I'm going to selfishly give a plug for a lead on from what we've just been discussing. On the 5th of October, I shall be hosting and presenting a half-day virtual workshop for leaders of law firms, or aspiring leaders, so maybe senior associates, the next generation of young blood coming through, that you want to step up into leadership roles, and also be able to basically take over the baton and take your firm into a new future, a new exciting future. So if you can join me, go to my website. You'll be able to see the registration button there. It's happening at 1 p.m. on the 5th of October for 3.5 hours using this platform. It will be interactive, so I hope you can join me then. But for now, let's just say thanks to Sam. And also, Sam, if people want to get in touch with you about any specific issues around the profitability of their firms or the valuation, the best place to get a hold of you presumably is at Markham's website. Well, our half an hour is up. As I always say on these chats, time flies by. But for now, look after yourself. And once again, thanks to More Markhams for being sponsors of the Law Chat. We also, we always have, I find, engaging discussions. And next month, we've got also a very engaging discussion as well with someone from Australia. More to be announced come in the next few weeks. But for now, Sam Bassett, thanks to you. And goodbye, everyone. We'll be in touch soon. Take care.
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.